Before we read our story for this week, Frog and Toad Together, we are going to be talking about our target skill. Our target skill for this week is story structure. The parts of a story work together. Characters are the people and animals. The setting is when and where a story takes place. Events make up the plot. The plot is often about a problem and how characters solve it. A story map can help you tell about different parts. Below is a story map. You can write about the characters, the setting, and the plot. Our target strategy will be analyze and evaluate. Tell how you think and feel about the story. Use text evidence to tell why. Our topic this week is gardens. To make a garden grow, you start with seeds. You plant them in the soil. Then you take care of them. You make sure they have enough water and sunlight. Soon the seeds will start to grow. Tiny plants will pop up in the soil. They will get bigger. Soon, you will have big plants with flowers or vegetables. Next, you will read a story about what happens when a character named Toad plants some seeds in the garden. Our story this week is The Garden from Frog and Toad Together by Arnold Lobel. Our genre is fantasy. A fantasy is a story that could not happen in real life. Look for animals who talked and act like people and events that could not really happen. Our essential question is, what grows in a garden? Let's get started reading. Frog was in his garden. Toad came walking by. "What a fine garden you have, Frog," he said. "Yes," said Frog. "It is very nice, but it was hard work." "I wish I had a garden," said Toad. "Here are some flower seeds. Plant them in the ground," said Frog, "and soon you will have a garden." "How soon?" asked Toad. "Quite soon," said Frog. Toad ran home. Who are our two characters in our story so far? Our two characters are Frog and Toad. Do you think that Frog and Toad know each other or are strangers? When Toad came walking by, he said, "What a fine garden you have, Frog." And Frog even gave Toad some flower seeds. We could say that Frog and Toad definitely know each other, and maybe are even friends. Let's keep reading. On our last page, Frog gave Toad some seeds, and Toad ran home. He planted the flower seeds. "Now seeds," said Toad, "start growing." Toad walked up and down a few times. The seeds did not start to grow. How do you think Toad is feeling about having his new seeds? Page 16 says that Toad ran home. And on page 17, after he planted the flower seeds, he told them to start growing and began walking up and down to see if they grew. I think that Toad is excited. Would you agree? Toad put his head close to the ground and said loudly, "Now, seeds, start growing!" Toad looked at the ground again. The seeds did not grow. Toad put his head very close to the ground and shouted, "Now, seeds, start growing!" Frog came running up the path. "What is all this noise?" he asked. "My seeds will not grow," said Toad. "You are shouting too much," said Frog. "These poor seeds are afraid to grow." "My seeds are afraid to grow?" asked Toad. What words are repeated on both of our pages? Think about the words that Toad said to his seeds. Toad said, "Now, seeds, start growing." And on our next page, he shouted, "Now, seeds, start growing!" Why do you think that these words were repeated? Maybe the author included this because he thought it would be funny. Toad is getting very frustrated over something kind of silly. Maybe the author included it twice to show us that Toad really wanted his seeds to grow. "Of course," said Frog. "Leave them alone for a few days. Let the sun shine on them. Let the rain fall on them. Soon your seeds will start to grow." That night, Toad looked out his window. "Drat," said Toad. "My seeds have not started to grow. They must be afraid of the dark." Toad went out to his garden with some candles. "I will read the seeds a story," said Toad. "Then they will not be afraid." Toad read a long story to his seeds. When you look at the picture on page 23, can you tell what the setting is? We see leaves and some darkness. It says that Toad went out into his garden with some candles. Toad was going to read a story to his plants. What would you say is Toad's problem? All Toad wants is for his seeds to grow, and they have not yet started. How is Toad trying to solve his seeds not growing? Toad thought that his seeds might be afraid of the dark. So he grabbed his candles and went outside in his pajamas to read them a story. Let's see what happens next. All the next day, Toad sang songs to his seeds. And all the next day, Toad read poems to his seeds. And all the next day, Toad played music for his seeds. Toad looked at the ground. The seeds still did not start to grow. "What shall I do?" cried Toad. "These must be the most frightened seeds in the whole world." Then Toad felt very tired, and he fell asleep. "Toad! Toad! Wake up!" said Frog. "Look at your garden!" Toad looked at his garden. Little green plants were coming up out of the ground. How do you think Toad is feeling now that he finally sees little green plants? When we look at Toad's face, he almost looks surprised. He has been waiting for these seeds to grow, and they're finally growing. He must feel very excited. Have you ever had to wait patiently for something to happen? When you wait patiently for something to happen, and it finally does, you feel very excited and happy. "At last," shouted Toad, "my seeds have stopped being afraid to grow." "And now you will have a nice garden too," said Frog. "Yes," said Toad, "but you were right, Frog. It was very hard work." What a wonderful story for us to get to read today about Frog and Toad and their adventure in the garden. We will be rereading this story this week, along with learning more about plants and gardening. Let's go to our next activity. This morning during morning meeting, we talked about our new sound of words with AR. This makes the R sound. For example, in the title of our decodable, Mark Shark, we hear ark, ark. The AR in both words make the R sound. In our story, as we are reading, I want you to be looking for words with AR in them. This will make the R sound. Try and read along with me at home. Mark Shark by Melissa Rothman. Illustrated by Terry Sloat. Mark Shark swam by this harp in the deep, dark sea. Mark Shark had never seen a harp. Can he play it? Mark plucked at a few strings, and a few notes came out. He made soft plucks. He plucked loudly. He played and played. Mark's pals had not seen him in a long time. "I shall find Mark," said Carl. Off swam Carl. Carl swam and swam. At last, sweet tunes filled the sea. Carl swam to see what made the sweet tunes. "Mark," said Carl, "I didn't know you played the harp." "I just started and kept playing each day," said Mark. Carl swam back to tell his pals. Then they all swam off to see Mark. Mark played, and the sharks all sang. Mark's pals asked Mark to teach them to play. "It's not that hard," said Mark. "But you must play each day. You must not give up." Mark was a huge star. Mark and his pals played and sang each day. They filled the sea with sweet tunes. What a great story for us to read. I loved how Mark said, "You must play each day and you must not give up." I'm sure there is something you can think of that you have never done before, but once you started practicing and doing it each day, you didn't think it was that hard after all. This story was great for also reading and listening for words that have R in them. A-R. To end our lesson, we are going to complete an activity in our reader's notebook. Let's get started. To end our lesson, we are going to be completing the activity on page 78 and 79 in our reader's notebook. On page 78 in our reader's notebook, it wants us to circle the words that that match the picture. We are working with words with AR. That letter sound together says R. We will look at each picture, read the two words, and circle the word that matches the picture best. Then we will complete our words to know activity to circle the word that best completes the sentence. Let's get started on page 78 in your reader's notebook. For number 1, we have the words cat, card. Is this a picture of a cat or a card? Circle the word that best matches the picture for number 1. For number 2, is this a picture of a star or a stamp? Circle the word that best matches this picture for number 2. Is it a star or a stamp? For number 3, look at what the people are doing. They are holding instruments. They are also wearing matching uniforms. This is called a marching band. The way they are walking, would you call this a march or a much? If they are a marching band, is the way they are walking called a march or a much? For number 4, we have a picture of a dog. If you look closely towards its mouth, we have sound coming out of it. What word would best match the picture? Barn, bark. Barn or bark? For number 5, we see a picture of an easel with a picture on it. What word would best go with this picture? Arm, art. Arm, art. Which word best goes with the picture for number 5? And for number 6, is this a picture of yard or yarn? What word best matches the picture? Yard or yarn? For the next page, page 79, we are working with our words to know, also called our sight words. The directions say to circle the correct word to complete each sentence. I will read the sentence with you, and then you will choose the word that best completes it. We will check your answers for both pages at the end of the lesson. Let's begin with sentence number 1. Dad reads us a funny blank. Dad reads us a funny story or noise. Circle the word that would best complete the sentence. Sentence number 2. The children are making a lot of blank. The children are making a lot of loudly noise. Circle the word that best completes the sentence for number 2. Number 3. Tim's parents are planning a trip around the blank. Tim's parents are planning a trip around the world. Window. Circle the word that best completes the sentence for number 3. Number 4. Those children are talking blank in class. Those children are talking loudly in class. Story in class. Circle the word that best completes the sentence for number 4. Number 5 says, I blank be late for school tomorrow. I few be late for school tomorrow. I shall be late for school tomorrow. Circle the word that best completes the sentence for number 5. Number 6 says, some animals hunt at blank. Some animals hunt at night. World. Circle the word that best completes the sentence for number 6. Number 7 says, close your blank when it rains. Close your night when it rains. Close your window when it rains. Circle the word that best completes the sentence for number 7. Number 8 says, blank birds can swim. Few shall. Circle the word that best completes the sentence for number 8. We have now completed going over each of our questions for both pages 78 and 79. Now let's check our answers. Beginning on page 78, number 1, this was a picture of a card. On number 2, this was a picture of a star. Number 3, march, best fit. In a marching band when they walk, it is sometimes called a march. For number 4, we would circle the word bark for the dog. Number 5, circle the word art. And number 6, circle the word yarn. For page 79, we needed to circle the correct word to complete each sentence. Number 1, we would say, Dad reads us a funny story. Number 2, the children are making a lot of noise. Number 3, Tim's parents are planning a trip around the world. Number 4, those children are talking loudly in class. Number 5, I shall be late for school tomorrow. I hope none of you will be late for school tomorrow. Number 6, some animals hunt at night. Number 7, close your window when it rains. And number 8, few birds can swim. How did you do on these activities? Did you answer a lot of your questions correctly? If you need to make any corrections, please do so in your notebook. And that brings us to the end of our reading lesson for today. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I will see you all later.